Okay, good evening. Welcome to the June 13th meeting of the formal Act 46 Study Committee. This is a committee duly appointed by local school boards. It's comprised of school board members and community members, and we are tasked with finding the best way for our community to comply with Act 46. Before we start, I'd like to go around and do introductions. We'll introduce our guests in a minute, but for the board members, would you maybe state your name and whether or not you're a board member or a community member and which town you're from, please?
Dan Monks, BSD board member.
Amy Dobson, Bennington community member.
Dick France, Woodford board.
John Peasley, Palmer board.
Erin McEnany, Shaftesbury community.
Jim Kelkey, SVSU superintendent.
Let's see, we'll skip you.
Jeff Leake, Shaftesbury School Board.
Sheila Sikora, BSD School Board.
Okay, and I'm not sure if I said, my name is Donald Campbell, and I'm a community member from the Bennington School Board. Also in the audience tonight, we have some representatives from MAU. Did I see? Yeah. Rob's here. Rob Plunkett and Nelson Brownell, who are both, Nelson also serves on the SVSU board, and they're here, I believe, representing the MAU board. We're thankful to have you in the audience. We have two special guests tonight. Donna Russo-Savage is, tell me if I get this right, Donna, but the Principal Assistant to the Vermont Secretary of Education. Is that right? And you get the award for coming the longest way to this meeting, so thank you very much for your long trip down here. And Dan French, whom I don't know too much about, but I hear you're an accomplished Act 46 consultant. So maybe we'll get a little bit more of an introduction from you when the time comes. So during this meeting, I'll try to make time for questions from the audience, since we all have a lot to learn, but we have a lot of work to do, and this is an open meeting, not a public debate. So I'll ask anybody with opinions rather than relevant questions to please email them to Jim. And Jim and I will make every effort to make sure that your opinions get circulated to the full committee. So we'll try to stick with questions tonight. The agenda is to hear what options we have open to us and how we might proceed. Before we go there, I'd like to acknowledge our friends in North Bennington. This law is not working very well for them, but they've worked hard to be part of the process. Their most recent decision not to join this formal study group actually gives us a little bit of clarity of purpose. We need to figure out what we want to have happen. I'd like to thank them for their past efforts, wish them good luck, and let them know that if ever there is a time that they would like to rejoin us, we would certainly welcome them back. So Jim, would you have any introduction that you'd like to give to Donna? Would you like to give us a little thumbnail sketch on her, or if you're not prepared for that, she can introduce herself.
I think it would be best if she and Dan introduced themselves.
Okay.
Then they'll get it more accurate.
Well, again, thank you for coming all this way, but if you would be willing to please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, and as I say, that our hope tonight is to kind of figure out what's still possible for us, and then how might we get there. So we'll start with the first part with you. Thank you.
So I don't know, do I speak to you all or do I speak to you?
You can speak to all of us. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Donna Russo-Savage. I work for the Agency of Education. I've been there for about 20 months. And I think it's really important that you know what my background is, in part because of what the Bennington banner, I guess, attributed or elevated me to or something this morning when they said that I was one of the architects of Act 46, which I'm not. But I do have a long history with Act 46. Prior to coming to the Agency of Education, I worked as nonpartisan legal counsel for the Vermont legislature for 16 years. And for the last 9 of those years, I was the nonpartisan legal counsel for education matters. So that meant that any of the 180 legislators and any of the committees who wanted to do anything related to education came to me. Whether it was a new bill, whether it was an amendment, whether, whatever. So I wrote Act 46. I wrote all of the amendments to Act 46. I wrote all of the amendments to try to get rid of Act 46. Everything that had to do with Act 46 came to me. And I talked through, I see Representative Miller's here, that I would come into their committee quite often and talk about okay, you want to go in this direction, have you thought about these other things? So I was very involved in it, but I certainly wasn't the architect, it wasn't my idea at all. It was, not that it's a good idea or a bad idea, just that that's not what my role is or was. And then I was also involved in the earlier acts that Act 46 incorporates. So Act 153, which was enacted in 2010, that kind of started this whole incentivized merger programs, and then Act 156, which was 2012, which expanded on that. So it was, you know, I was there for like this kind of growth of process into what became Act 46 and what kind of got pulled into Act 46. So when, after that was enacted in 2015, just through a series of odd coincidences, I ended up at the Agency of Education working on this matter. And one of the things that I made very clear to the Secretary, and the Secretary made very clear to me, is that my job at the agency is exactly as it was at the legislature. I'm not here to tell anybody what they should do. I'm not here to say that Act 46 is a good law or a bad law. I'm just here to try to explain what the law is now and try to help you understand its details. And I'm available all of the time. It's usually best if you kind of try to funnel your questions maybe through your chair or through your superintendent, just so that everybody gets the same information. People aren't asking a lot of the same questions. But anytime you have questions, you should feel comfortable sending them to me, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. So I do have a PowerPoint prepared. It's long and it's boring, and I'm not going to go through it all, but I wanted to put together some information so that I could send it to Jim, and he could put it on the website, and it would be there for you as background information if you decided to go back and look at it. There are a few things, though, that I do want to focus on it. So the first is key concepts. The thing that's I think is really important that I do want to talk about tonight is necessary and advisable districts and operating and tuitioning, because I think both of those things are important for what your situation is currently. Then we'll go to the options as I see them for you. I mean, there are many different things that could happen, but where you are right now, the options that I saw, these seem like structurally where you are, what's most likely to be your options. And then just some miscellaneous information that you might want to have access to. So I'm just going to skip through. There's information here about Act 46, what the intent was, what the goals are, the definition of a preferred structure, how Act 46 acknowledged that a preferred structure wasn't going to work everywhere, and so they realized that there were going to be some places where there needed to be supervisory unions with multiple districts. And so a supervisory union, that's an important thing to remember. A supervisory union with multiple districts is an alternative structure. So it can be a newly merged district. People tend to talk about alternative structures as staying the same as you currently are. But there are several kinds of incentivized merged districts that technically are alternative structures. So an alternative structure can be one of those newly merged districts. It just happens to be part of a larger SU. Or it could also be a district or a group of districts that wants to stay as they currently are within a supervisory union structure without changing their governance at all. So this is just, again, this is for background. There's a phased approach, and this lays out the steps. There's several pages of laying out the steps. Okay, necessary and advisable districts is what I want to get to. So when a 706 study committee comes up with a proposal, the statutes require you to name every single district that is included in your proposal as either necessary to the proposal or as advisable to the proposal. If it's a necessary district, it is necessary to the formation. You wouldn't be able to form without it. It's crucial. It wouldn't be viable either structurally or fiscally or educationally or whatever. It wouldn't be viable unless you included that district. So it's called a necessary district. Only a district that's a formal member of a study committee can be named a necessary district. You can't name another district somewhere else a necessary district. And another thing is that if you do have a merger proposal, the merger proposal can go forward only if every single necessary district says yes. There are advisable districts, though, and that's somebody who would be, some district that would be a really positive addition, but isn't crucial, or maybe there are structural issues. So an advisable district can either be a formal member of a study committee if for some reason, it could be a political reason. If, for example, there have been some situations where a district that is a formal member of a study committee is named as advisable because the study committee is not really sure how the vote is going to go in that district. And so they make the political decision that they're going to name that formal member as an advisable district because they want the vote, they want the merger to be able to go forward, and if it were named as a necessary district, it would have to vote yes for it to go forward. So there sometimes are reasons to name a formal member as an advisable district. But very often, it is a district that's not a formal member. There's a provision in statute that indicates that the study committee can invite other districts to the table, or to the, probably not to the table, but to the discussion. And they wouldn't necessarily be a voting member, but they can take part in the conversation. So I think that, the situation that you have with North Bennington, that might be something that at some point you decide you want to do. In part because of what your current structure is and the situation that you have with really not being able to move forward unless they are at least part of the proposal at this point. Even though the statutes expect that a district is going to come and talk to you and be part of it, of the conversation, if it's a non-member district that you're going to name as an advisable district, there's nothing that requires that to happen. So, for example, if you were to ask North Bennington to come, and if after one meeting they chose not to participate anymore, you still could name them, or you could name Arlington, or you could name somebody else that you thought was a good member, could be a good member to your proposal as an advisable district, even if they didn't take part or didn't in your conversations. So one of the things that's really important to remember is that whether the voters of an advisable district voted in favor of a proposal has no bearing on whether or not the proposal goes forward. If the voters of every necessary district vote in favor of the proposal, then the new union district is created, and it's created either including the advisable district, if the voters of the advisable district say yes, or without the advisable district, if the voters of the advisable district say no. And the one exception is that if you go down the route of a modified unified union school district, they can still be a partial member even if they vote no. Two things to remember are also is that, and this was really would be very important for you if there was going to be a district that is not a formal member of your committee, who you were going to name as an advisable member. If a district is named as advisable, the school board of that district is not required to warn the vote. So, and in order to move forward with some of the different options that you have, you would need to have North Bennington move forward with the vote. So if the school board in North Bennington decided that it was not advisable to move forward and warn the vote, they are not required to do so, except if 10% of their voters petition them to do so. So that's just going to be something that you're going to need to be thinking about as you go forward with different options. So this next thing, I wanted to touch on this because North Bennington does have a different structure than you have, and because it is part of you in connection with the Union High School, it makes things tricky for you. And understanding operating and tuitioning and what can and can't occur. Again, I'll try to go through this kind of quickly, but it'll be background for you. So a school district provides for the education of its students in every grade that it's organized for, either by operating a school or by paying tuitions. And it's up to the voters and only the voters who decide whether a school is operated or tuition is paid. One thing that I know this is well, I hope that this isn't too boring, but I think it's really important to understand this. So if you have a single town district that's pre-K through 12 operating, that town district can't choose two different options for how to educate students who are in the same grade. So for example, if you can't divide neighborhood A and neighborhood B and say that grade 9 through 12 students have to attend, so if this is a single town district, and this is the 9 through 12 school building, and this is the pre-K through 8 school building. This town, and I come from Montpelier, so I often use it, in my example. You can't divide a line down the middle of Montpelier and say everybody who lives over near the high school, those 9 through 12 students must attend the high school. But everybody who's on the other side of town in neighborhood B can attend the high school if they want to, or if you want to go somewhere else, the district will pay their tuition for you. So I think it's pretty easy to understand that that's a single town. It's one group of students. It's one school board. It's one budget. You treat all your kids in the same grade the same way. What people have a harder time wrapping their head around is when you've created a new district out of two towns. So in this particular case, we've got town district Y, that's pre-K through 12 operating, and town district Z, which is pre-K 8 operating, 9 through 12 tuitioning. And so this is analogous. It's not exactly the same situation that you have with North Bennington, but it's analogous to that. So if those two districts wish to merge into a single district, then they become a single legal entity, just as if they were a single town. For purposes of their school district, they are a single entity. So just like town district, whatever it was, X, even though it would include two towns, it's a single unified budget, tax rate, voters, students, everything is unified even though it's two towns. It's a single unit. So for that reason, you need to think about them as two neighborhoods in one town, not as two towns anymore. And that means that if the students are in the same grade, they have to be educated in the same way. So if you have two town districts that want to merge and they have different operating tuitioning structures, then regardless of the neighborhood in which they live, they need to be educated in the same way if they're in the same grade, which means that one or the other or both, depending upon how they want to organize things, has to change. So if the voters in both want to merge, then the voters also have to agree either, and these are two examples of what could happen, that all of the students in grade 9 through 12 are going to attend the high school that's located in town Y. That's one thing that they could agree with. Town Z might decide to stop tuitioning and send all of the students to the high school in town Y. Another thing they might decide, if they choose to, is maybe they'll decide to close the high school. And they'll continue to operate two elementary schools, and they'll pay tuition for all of them. So this is just to let you know that it's only the voters that can make these decisions to change. So the state board can't force two districts that are different to merge. The study committee can't force that. Other towns can't force another district that's different from it to merge with it. So that is only something that the voters can decide, which means that the options in your situation are limited. Okay. So, you've probably been hearing about Act 49, which was H 513. It was just enacted this year, and it had a lot of different provisions in it. It went through a lot of iterations. There are other opportunities, more flexibility that's provided for different kinds of situations, but it tends to be more flexibility provided for single districts that are different, like not districts that are joined the way that you are at the high school level. Really, I think there are only two things that really affect what you are doing. One is that there were there were what we called 3 different phases of incentivized mergers, and phase 2 was the regional education district model, the side-by-side model, and the modified union model. All of those are eligible for tax rate reductions and others, transitional assistance, including the ability to still use the 3.5% more harmless and small school grants becoming perpetual. That originally the deadline for approval by the voters was July 1st of this year. One of the things that Act 49 does is it extends that approval date to November 30th of this year. So you've got a little bit more time. If you decide to do something that would be eligible for tax rate reductions, you've got a little bit more time to do that. The other thing that they changed is that if you either have a vote and it's not successful, or you choose after having met for a while that, no, we just can't come to an agreement and we're just going to submit what people often call a proposal for an alternative structure, but it's really just a proposal basically to stay the same. You either do it as a district or a group of districts. That deadline was originally November 30th of this year. The legislature changed it to either be 6 months after the state board's rules went into effect, or January 30th, whichever was earliest. And so the state board's rules are just about to go into effect. They'll go into effect on June 26th. That second option would be December 26th, of when you need to have a proposal in if you want it to stay the same, either as a single district or a group of districts saying we'd like to stay the same. So with that in mind, these are options. It's not necessarily all of them. I mean, things could change. There could be. I know that last year when I came down and talked with a different group of you, or some of you probably are the same, but North Bennington, at least at the time, was talking about asking to withdraw from the Union High School. So I mean, this doesn't take into account things like that might happen. This is more like, if you are the structure you are now, here are the options. So it's not necessarily all of them, but it's the ones that are the most apparent at this point, given the current facts and the current law. So, and it may not be what the current reality is, but these are structurally what you can do. The first one is forming a unified union school district. This would be what your current situation is. Again, these are slides that I prepared for pre-K through 8, and North Bennington is through 6, isn't it? So the numbers aren't all going to be necessarily right. They're just slides that I use in different presentations. But so this is a situation where there are 4 town school districts. 3 of them operate elementary schools through 8. One of them, Town District D, tuitions those students. All of them are members of a Union High School, and that Union High School building is here in Town C. So by forming a union school district, all of them, each individual town, the voters in each individual town would have to agree that they're all going to form one pre-K through 12 entity. It doesn't mean that any of the buildings are going to close. It just means that governing entity is one unit, and teachers can be moved around, and there's more flexibility. So that would mean that potentially pre-K 8 buildings would still be in A, B, and C, and the high school would still be in Town C. Town D, which had been paying tuition for its pre-K 8 students, after some period of grandfathering, would enroll its students in one of the town elementary schools, if this is something that all the voters agree to. One of the things that we've seen, and you may want to talk with, it might actually be very interesting for you to talk to some of the places that are a little further along than you are, but I know that in Rutland South with Superintendent Ms. David Younts, one of the things that they're really looking into and maybe starting to implement is having, the different elementary schools be magnet schools to some degree, so that the elementary schools, they all have the same curriculum, but maybe one of them is focused more on the arts and one of them is more focused on the environment, and having some ability for students to, in the elementary grades, to choose which elementary school they're going to go to. The next option you have would be that same option, the Unified Union School District, but then there would be a fallback of a Modified Union School District. Sometimes people call them MUDs. It's Modified Unified Union School District. And you can't propose just to do this. You always have to propose the Union School District and then say, but if a majority, if all of the districts we name as necessary vote yes, if a majority of all of the districts vote yes, and one or more of the advisable districts votes no, then we will form this other structure. So it starts off in the same way. This is the same as that earlier one that I showed you, where Town District D is pre-K through 12, pre-K through 8 tuitioning. Each of the others operates pre-K through 8, and all of them are members of the Union High School. This is what the Modified Unified Union School District would look like afterwards, is that everything that's in yellow is pre-K through 12. You still would have the pre-K through 8 school buildings in each of those towns. You'd still have the high school in that town. All of the town A, B, and C would be members of the Union School District for purposes of pre-K through 12. Town District D would remain a member of that new Union School District for the same grades that it was a member of the Union High School District. It just gets transferred to that new entity. And it would maintain its town district status. Those would no longer be town districts at all. They would be just members of a pre-K through 12 district. Town District D would keep its elementary school districtness, and it would continue to pay tuition for pre-K through 8, which means that because you have this school district and this school district, you would still need to keep your supervisory union structure around it because you have only one district. In the other situation, you could just collapse the two of them into each other. In this one, you'd have to have two. Because you have two, you'd have to have the SU. The third option that you might want to consider, and again, this is all going to depend upon what your self-evaluation is and what what the benefits and the costs are, the challenges of this, and whether this makes sense for you. But you might want to consider a Union Elementary School District. And that would, again, starting off with exactly the same situation where you have one town district that tuitions pre-K through 8 and the other town districts that operate, all of which are members of the Union High School. You could do this if you chose to. The Union High School wouldn't change. All 4 towns would still be members of the Union High School. Town District D wouldn't change. It would still be pre-K through 8 tuitioning, but all of the towns, all of the districts that operated elementary schools would merge into one Union Elementary School District. They'd still keep them all open, but they're one district, and then they'd have that flexibility to share resources and modulate tax rates and stuff because they're a union. So this would now go from being 5 districts to being 3 districts. It would be the Union Elementary School District, the Union High School District, and then the Town Elementary School District. Again, I have no idea if this is a good idea or a bad idea. I was just trying to come up with what you could do given your current situation structurally. Fourth thing is that you could do is you could just decide that either if the vote goes down or if you just decide that none of these options are good options for you, you could decide to make that Section 9 proposal, which is saying either a single district or several of the districts together can do it jointly, where you just say, this is what we want to do, we've tried to merge, or we don't think merger makes sense, this is our situation. we've self-evaluated, we've talked to each other. Here are some proposals for how we can meet the challenges that we've identified, and here are some concrete examples of how we can meet those challenges. So by December 26th of this year, we'd have to have that proposal. It's the school board that makes the proposal. In this particular case, there's no vote of the electorate. It then gets considered when the secretary is making the proposed statewide plan and the state board is making the final statewide plan. So, again, this is just something I'm just going to skip through again. But
May I interrupt you? Do you think it would be good to stop here just for a second and see if the committee members have questions about those 4 proposals, or would you like to take them at the end?
I'm almost at the end, so why don't I do
Okay.
that, if that's okay? So one thing is leaving a school district. This is just a union school district. And this is the same process regardless of whether it's a union elementary school, a union high school, or a modified unified union school district. This is the process here of what has to happen, and I just laid it out in little bullets. Again, we've got exactly the same picture that we started with. If town district D wanted to withdraw from the union high school, and its voters voted in favor of it, and the voters in the other towns voted in favor of letting town district D withdraw, then this is what you would end up with. You'd end up with this unit here with 3 town districts that could be merged into a pre-K through 12 if they chose to. And then town district D would be its own totally separate district for pre-K through 12. And it would end up being pre-K through 12 tuition because it no longer would be operating in these schools. The default would be that it would be all in one supervisory union, but it wouldn't have to be when they could move. The next thing is how to leave a supervisory union. And then, this is an important thing, is that if a district is a member of a union high school district, it can't belong, it has to withdraw first from it before it can be in another supervisory union. It can't be a member of two supervisory unions at the same time. And then self-examination, I put this in here because it applies regardless of whether you're doing the work that you've been pulled together to do, or whether you end up being districts that do self-examination and submit a proposal, in December. It's really, these are kind of 3 main points. It's understanding where your district and region currently is in relation to the 5 goals, what are your strengths and weaknesses, and how do you best support and address them. And then it's your chance to explain to the state board why you think whatever it is you've come up with is the best solution. I have some links in here. One is board membership. It's a table that gives differences and similarities between the 3 different types of board membership that are all constitutional. One thing it doesn't talk about really directly is that you can also weight membership, and that can change those as well. The second one, understanding your district. We have a number of data sets and spreadsheets that are all in one location on our agency's website and the governance page that might be helpful to you at some point. And then the alternative structure proposal rules that are going to go into effect in 2 weeks. Even though you might not be doing that, the items that they list as data points might be things it might be interesting just to look through it, just to say, oh yeah, I didn't even think about, we might want to talk about how we're different in that way, or how we're doing in that way, or how we can improve in that particular data point. It lists for several pages different kinds of things that you might want to look at. And then this is just to tell you how our governance website pages are set up, and those are links to each of the pages. And then that's Brad James is our fiscal person who works on this, and then my contact as well.
Great.
Okay.
So did everybody get all of that? In case you're worried, the good Richard Bump is not here tonight taking minutes, but Jim tells me that he will go over the tape, and he will make meticulous minutes, as he always does.
And there is a pad of paper, I don't know if it ended with Dan, but it needs to go to the audience he'll record everybody who's here.
Okay.
And I will
So-
send this so that you can take
So,
your time.
so that, we'll have the minutes, and we'll have this presentation all on the SU website. So never fear, you can always go back and read more about it again. So I guess I would like to take questions from the committee members, and then if there are questions from the audience, would welcome them too. Mike Cutler, our CAT TV expert, has asked that anybody who would like to ask a question, please use the microphone. But let's start with committee members first and see what you've got for Donna, and then we'll ask the audience for their participation.
How
John?
does this help educate the kids? What does it do for the education?
Okay, it depends upon what it is you decide to do. And as I said, I'm not here to say it's a good law or a bad law. It depends upon what you decide to do. But one of the things that some of the places that have decided to go forward have seen is that in situations where they've had declining enrollment in their schools, and they've had to continually, because each budget is its own little unit, and as you know, tax rates are essentially determined by the number of students that you have, and the only way that you can keep it down if you have a declining enrollment is to cut programs. What we've seen in some places is that they've been able to come up with clever ways to share resources among districts among schools that they didn't have the ability to do when they were single districts. Sharing teachers, doing different things differently and using their resources differently in a way that enables the kids who haven't had an art class in several years to start having art again, or whatever it ends up being. It really depends upon what it is you decide to do and what your particular challenges are. And that's something that Dan or another consultant can help you, work your way through. It also, part of also what happens is because the denominator of the tax rate is the number of equalized pupils, if you have a larger denominator, then if you lose one or two kids, there's less fluctuation in your tax rate than if you have, if you have 10 kids and you lose 2, it makes your tax rate fluctuate a lot more than if you have 200 kids and you lose 2. So because there's less fluctuation in the tax rates overall among all of the districts, that also can enable more stability and hopefully increased programming, or at least not losing programming. And again, it's really what you decide to do and how you decide to use the flexibility. Simply merging and not changing anything else won't do anything at all. At all. It'll just, it'll be one fewer, it'll be just one board meeting. I mean, that'll be the extent of the difference. It really is taking advantage of whatever flexibility is there because you're a single unit.
Thank you.
Other committee members?
So what is this, what are some of the benefits for like teachers? You said they can be moved around, but so that might be a benefit to students or in a school. But is there the flip side to that? What does that mean for a teacher, and how?
I think that could vary from place to place, and could vary depending on how geographically broad an area is. But one of the things that we've heard is that it's brought more stability to their staff because perhaps there were a lot of little schools who had a .2 teacher and somebody else had a .3 teacher, and one teacher is trying to cobble something together, and then they're let go at one school. If they can be one full-time teacher who's teaching at several of the schools, they have the stability of knowing that they have a full-time job. So one of the things we've heard, and you might want to talk with Chittenden East, their superintendent, because they've been around a little bit longer than any of the others that are operational, and that's one of the things I think that they've noticed is that they've become like or this is what I've heard anecdotally, they've become a district that teachers want to come to because they know that there's the chance of more stability, and if they are hired, there are so many different places they could be used that they could be moved around. I don't know that would always work. If you're extremely geographically dispersed, and it may not make any sense to do that.
And some of these things are things that we would presumably explore in the future while we decide if it's worth it for us to go forward with this. So, other questions from the committee members? When I was doing introductions, I neglected to introduce the fact that we have two representatives here, Alice Miller from Shaftesbury, and Bill Botsow snuck in from Pownell, or did he sneak out again? There he is. So we're lucky to have you folks here. Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions? And again, I would remind the audience that the opinions could be emailed to Jim and to the committee, but if there are any questions about the content of what Donna's just presented, we'd certainly welcome them at this point. So come on up, Mike. Can somebody adjust the mic, please? Or Mike? Your voice does carry.
He's loud, all right.
So we're looking. So Mike, we're looking for. You came in a little late. I did say we're looking for questions here, not you know, sort of opinions at this point. We're just trying to get straight about what the options are. So.
My opinion a question.
And one of the things I said too is I'm not here to convince you of anything or to say it's a law or a bad law. I'm just here to say what the law is.
Relax. Each other. Can we keep what we have right now? Because we're meeting all the mandates that Act 46 basically wants. Can we keep what we've got right now instead of looking into a mud and all these other things and say, because I truly believe we do everything you basically want done, what I've seen you explain. And quite honestly, if it's got to go to the voters, I don't think the voters are going to go vote for any of this. Because right now, I believe we could float teachers around if we wanted to. BSD does have it in their charter that they can put, because I taught years ago and they changed it, the K through 6, we can send students if we wanted to, if BSD wanted to. But the teacher element, I mean, I can't see throwing out our whole system because teachers might feel more comfortable that they won't be let go. That was one of the points you
Well,
just...
can I just comment on that just a little bit? It's not just that they're more comfortable that they might go, it's that they're more likely to want to stay. If they have a .2 job or a .2 plus a .3 and whatever job, and in some neighboring district, they're able to get a full-time job, even if you put in your time and your effort to bring them to the standard that you want to, they're more likely to want to leave. So it gives more stability to the...
But we could, if that isn't in our charters now, we could put that in now, would we?
Not as easily, because each individual school district is like its own, it is its own entity. So the teacher has an employee who has a contract with that town district.
Can I ask you, pause there, is that true, Mr. Culkeen, or do they all, does the SU hire the teachers?
So I think Shaftesbury has one teacher that we share with another district.
But the contract would be,
It'd be two
it would be two
contracts.
separate contracts.
If I'm
No,
Yeah.
no,
right.
I don't think it is. Isn't
No,
it?
we share teachers in BSD, but not with other
Well,
districts.
we could if we
We
wanted.
could, we have shared fractional teachers, like a
Yeah,
half
so
an
you
hour
have to have a
teacher.
fractional contract, that's the thing.
So they have
it-
two separate contracts.
It's possible, it's just messier. I'm just gonna take this down because I'm gonna forget it
But
otherwise.
rather throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I think it would be easier to do the small things that you're talking about.
So,
Any other-
may I just answer,
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
answer your question, yes, you could. If you chose, either if there was
And that'd be option 4, no action.
right, there is the option for no action, which is, or which could also be that you have that what is called a Section 9 proposal, where either each school board individually or as a group or any group of the school boards would present a proposal to the state board saying, you know, we've analyzed ourselves, here's how we meet the goals, here are the ways that we intend to do things specifically to improve in areas where we're challenged, and then you just have to wait to see if the state board agrees with you. But that is...
But we could stay the way we are if we wanted.
No, you can propose to stay the way you are if you want to. I don't know what the state board would do.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions from the peanut gallery? David, come on up.
Question for you.
Okay.
David Durkee. And I wanted to just go back to the options section. And my question is whether, I may have missed it, I may have missed a slide there, but can we propose a modified unified union school district? Or is that only a default as a fallback?
Yeah, it can only be a fallback, so, but it's all in the same warning. The warning says,
Proposing this.
we propose, do the voters of school district X vote to approve a proposal where, you will join with all of these other districts and be a single pre-K through 12 district. And if, no more than 2 of the advisable districts vote no, it will be a modified union school district. Yeah, the way that it was set up in law was only as a fallback, not as a straight out.
Okay. So then, just, and again, maybe it's clear to everybody else, but in the situation that we have, with North Bennington not being part of this committee, and with them possibly or not possibly being part of the vote, can you just talk through how that might play out?
Right.
I'll take this.
Okay, so
Thanks, David.
even though North Bennington is not part of your committee formally at this point, you could invite North Bennington to come to the table and tell you, just if you want the language of what it says. It is,
It's okay, Don, you can give it to us in
Okay.
plain English.
Sorry. Here we go, it's BBB. It says, the committee may contact additional school districts it believes may be advisable to include in the proposal. So as a committee, not as a single person, as a committee, you can decide, yes, it makes sense, let's ask North Bennington to come and talk to us. You could then name it as advisable, even if they don't say continually to talk, you can name them as advisable, because the only way that you can get to a MUD is if North Bennington votes. So that's where you get into what could be problematic, is you could name North Bennington as advisable, but if the school board wasn't willing to bring it to its voters to vote on, then you'd have to wait for there to be 10% of the voters asking the board to bring it to a vote.
Just to clarify, you said twice now, but I'm not sure you meant it, that after the first meeting, they wouldn't have to come back. So would they have to come to the first meeting?
No, I know.
Okay.
It's just, this specifically is kind of assuming that that's what's going to happen, but there's nothing here that says that an advisable member has to be anybody who's ever come to talk to you.
But they had to warn the vote for that, correct?
Right, the thing is, though, is that the vote does have to be warned. Exactly.
Does the vote have to pass if it's
No.
warned? Just has to be
Not
warned?
for a MUD, it just has to occur. So if the North Bennington School District board does not want to warn it, the only way that it can get warned is if 10% of their voters file a petition asking for it to be warned. And there may be very good reasons that they would want to have it warned, so that their voters can say, no, we want to stay the way we are. I mean, that gives them a very clear chance of being able to say that. And then that means that the MUD could be formed at that point.
Does that take away their, can you speak to how that impacts the district that has said that they don't want to participate? How does that impact their self-governance for education for their town? Does it bind them to the MUD in a way that they absolutely want to know part of in the first place?
It doesn't bind them in any way other than they're currently filed. So this would be the result of a MUD. All of these districts would be pre-K through 12 in the MUD. This district, which before the merger would have been a member of the Union High School for 9-12, its membership gets transferred into a 9 through 12 membership, and then they keep their elementary school district just as it is.
And then if they opted to leave for the 9 through 12, they would have to follow the same procedures that they would previously.
Exactly. One thing that's different about your situation is that in other places, Lemoyle North, we have this is a situation, and Cambridge, which operates pre-K through 8 or 6 or whatever it is, it does operate So if the state board chooses to, the state board could ask the Lamoille North Mud, will you accept Cambridge? And if they say yes, the state board can require Cambridge to move in and become part of the pre-K-12 district. But in your particular situation, because North Bennington is tuitioning at pre-K through 6, the state board would not be able to require it to become part of the MUD for those grades.
It seems like the UUSD is kind of off the table right now, but that the MUUSD might still be possible, and the Union Elementary School District might still be possible. And the Section 9 proposal is still a possibility. Which of those could we do without North Bennington, without any vote on their part?
The Union Elementary School District, you could do without a vote North Bennington, because that would just be, the each of the feeding elementary school districts saying, okay, if we became a single district, what benefits would we see from that? And that is not a that's not a option that anyone has taken advantage of yet, but it is an option that's been around and is eligible for the tax rate reductions. It's been around since 2012. And it is eligible for that and for the other assistance.
But in theory, the town could, 10% of the vote could warn their own meeting.
Correct.
So you could have an outside community member in that part of the school board,
You mean in one situation?
just in one situation.
Yes, from North Bennington. If
And
they,
so they could, I hate to say force the hand, but they could force the vote without
Or
the
it
school
could be
board.
that the school board sees that there's a benefit for the mutual vote.
And they bring it to the vote themselves.
Yeah.
yeah, so hypotheticals that we don't have to work with
Right,
right
but
now.
you're right, that the one that you would not have to have them involved at all would be the Union Elementary School District or a Section 9 proposal to essentially stay the same.
Okay.
They do.
Sorry, Dan.
My question got answered, so
Oh.
I didn't even have to ask it, so thank you.
I'm sorry, couldn't see all that way down. Anybody else from the board? No, I went off the rails at the end of your proposal just a little bit when you were talking about leaving an SU. So could you just, how does that fit with our situation?
That would just be, if, for example, North Bennington, for example, chose to leave and became its own pre-K through 12 tuitioning district, that would enable everybody else who is left to become a pre-K through 12 unified union school district. And you might not want to have an SU structure around you. You might just want to be your own unit, be your own single district SU.
I see one less board and, yeah. mhm.
Right, it was it would be two less boards because the school or the SU board would both go. You would have just one board,
Okay.
totally. So in that instance, you might either town district B might want to leave, or this group of districts might want that district to leave.
Can I ask one question on that point?
But just a minute. On that point, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
You say if North Bennington wants to leave, but there has to be multiple votes from all of us for them to leave. It isn't like it's just their choice, correct?
Correct. This is one of the things I stated through.
Right.
It's here, if you want, it's the voters in town D vote, do you want to withdraw? If yes, then the voters in each of the other member towns have to vote yes also. And then if it's yes in each town, then that pretty much happens. The one thing that would, let me think about this for a minute. No, okay, it would be the same thing even if it's.
So it's not quite as simple as just North Bennington saying, oh, we're not going to do this, we'll have a vote, we don't want to do it.
Correct.
We all have to let them do it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, Mike, we've kind of felt that it was unlikely that that would happen. And so
Which would happen if they would want to leave.
all the other schools would vote, MA would vote them out, right? So I saw at least two other hands back here. Barry, want to?
Mary Shasbury. You keep saying, and although what Mike just brought up, clarified that a little bit. You said, if North Bennington leaves or chooses to leave. Well, what happens if they did? Can they exist by themselves? I don't think they can.
They would be a pre-K through 12 tuitioning district, and they would be assigned to, they would be paying tuition for all of their students.
Right.
And they would.
Which they do now.
No, they pay tuition for their elementary school students. They don't pay tuition
Oh.
for their high school students.
Right.
They would be pre-K through 12, tuitioning all. They would not be able to be their own total entity. They would be assigned to an SU.
That's
It
what I
might be
mean.
your SU, it might be another SU. And that's why I put in the thing about leaving an SU, because without that little wrinkle that they are, the rest of you all have exactly the same structure. And if you want to become a single unit, you could, and it might make more sense for North Bennington to be a member of another district, or SU.
Thanks for asking that question, Bert. I'm going to try to keep us on track with the schools that are here, in terms of not getting too far down in the weeds with what's going on with North Bennington. But Nelson, did you want to come up?
I've got about 3 questions. First of all, you keep saying that North Bennington is a tuition school, which it is, but the state pays that tuition for a lot of students. So how does that play into this? If it's a state-funded.
Everything is state funded, so we're all paying for North Bennington's decision to tuition. But that wouldn't change. It would still be whatever their budget is.
But you're calling it a tuition school, which.
No, a tuition district. It's a district that pays tuition. It doesn't operate a school, it pays tuition for its students. Yeah.
The other thing you keep talking about is 5 goals, these 5 goals that we're supposed to reach. Can you tell us what those 5 goals
Yeah,
are?
they're at the very beginning. I skipped over.
Nelson, we have a whole nother section of this meeting to get to, so I appreciate the question, but I don't want to get that too down in the weeds on this.
They don't need to go into
So
detail. I just want to-
this is the intent as stated in Act 46, and then, so it's like the 3rd page of this slide you can look at, and this is the goals as stated in Act 46. So that they're educational, equity, and financial and transparency goals.
Okay, if we're already meeting some of them, we should write that in our proposal.
You should, but one of the things they expect is people to want to continue to improve. So you need to also be putting in how you anticipate being able to improve.
You talked about modulated tax rates.
I'm not the financial person, but I can tell you a little bit about how it affects tax rates. Is that what you mean? Why it's different? Okay. So a district's, okay, this is where I like Brad to be with me. He couldn't come tonight. A district's tax rate is its budget. I mean, this is really, really simple terms. Its budget divided by the number of equalized pupils it has. That's part of the calculation. So if you have a very small district that has either decreasing population or population that's going up and down, or populations whose needs are going up and down, that can really affect that district's tax rate. So the tax rate is going up a lot, or it's just going up and down a lot. If you have it's kind of like a risk pool. If you have a larger budget and a larger denominator of students, then if you lose a few students, or if the needs are a little bit greater, because it's a larger risk pool, the tax rate tends to be more stable.
So the tax rate is set across all schools?
Yeah, it's pre-CLA, so your common level of appraisal would still apply, but because you would have one budget and one large group of students, even though they're attending different schools, your tax rate would be the same throughout all of the towns before the common level of appraisal is applied to it.
Are towns allowed to go outside the state to form, say a school like Powell wanted to leave this district and go outside of the state and go join Williamstown, Mass. School, which it used to send their students years ago.
Yeah, there are, we currently have a compact with New Hampshire. We have a partial compact with New York. We do not have one with Massachusetts. What has to happen is you have to create an interstate school district. I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that the Vermont legislature has to approve of the compact. The other state's legislature has to approve of the compact. And then the Congress has to approve of the compact. So I know that all of that happened in New Hampshire, and we have we have two interstate school districts with New Hampshire because that did happen. Vermont approved the New York-Vermont compact. New York's legislature did not, so it never even got to Congress. And as far as I've never even heard that there were conversations with Massachusetts.
Yeah, Stanford and North Adams.
Right, but there has to be a compact in place first that has to be approved by Vermont legislature, Massachusetts legislature, and Congress before that can happen.
When you say Congress, you're talking federal?
Federal. Exactly. It's an interstate school district. An interstate school district is created under federal law. State laws still apply to some degree, but they're created under federal law.
Thank you,
So
Nelson.
if you are interested in that, you should talk to the superintendents in one of the current interstate school districts.
I know, I just was asking.
So why don't we take one more question from the audience, and then we'll see if we can transition here.
Can you put your number back up on the board, your number and the other gentleman's?
My name is Bruce Whitman, and I live in Bennington. A question about the Union Elementary District. If the Union Elementary District is formed, as described here, there is no K-12 district formed. It's my understanding that when the Secretary of Education develops a final formal plan, that makes a unit more subject to reorganization by the Secretary of Education if there's no K-12 district formed by merger.
Okay, there are two things to that. One is the secretary only makes a proposal, it's the state board that has the authority. But because of your particular situation, they can't force you to do that because of North Bennington. They can't force North Bennington to change.
No,
So because of that, they can't make you, there's no way that the state board can make you a pre-K through 12.
Even if the districts that are not tuitioning form the Union District.
Because North Bennington is still part of the Union High School. There isn't, the only way a MUD can be formed is in that process that I told you about, under current law at least, unless they change that. The state board doesn't have the independent authority to create a MUD. So because North Bennington is part of the Union High School District, I'm not aware of any way that the state board would be able to create a pre-K through 12 district in their supervisory union. They could, however, if you don't create that Union Elementary School, if they thought that made sense, they could require that.
Because if we form no other merger in the form of a supervisory district.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, unless the committee members have any other questions, I would like to thank you, Donna, for really doing a good job. It's hard stuff, and thank you for taking us through that. But I think you've answered our sort of number one question that Nelson brought up at the last meeting, which was really what options are open to us, and what specifically could we do under the current legislation and under the current conditions. So it sounds to me like we have 4 options, at least 3 may be viable. But we may or may not want to go down that route. So I think the idea is that we would end up asking somebody who can help us work through a process that might think through all of the twists and turns of what this might mean to us, and get to a point where we felt like either it was a good decision because of some of the things that you've mentioned tonight, Donna, and many other things, or whether it would seem like a bad decision and we would not go that route. So Dan, I don't know if you'd mind introducing yourself, but maybe tell us a little bit about what you've done, and then if you could walk us through what a process like this might look like, we could maybe decide as a committee whether or not we want to move forward.
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me. My name's Dan French. Until July 1st, I was the superintendent in Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union, which is the Manchester area, Sunderland, Manchester, Dorset, Pollitt, Rupert, Danby, Mount Tabor, Londonderry, Weston, Peru, and Landgrove, and Windholme. I was there for 9 years, colleague of Jim's. I didn't retire on July 1st. I decided not to be a superintendent anymore. And now I work at St. Michael's College, where I run the school leadership graduate program. I still live in Manchester. I commute there not on a daily basis. I'm up there a couple days a week. And then on the side, I do consulting helping districts with a variety of issues. Act 46 is one of those areas where I get involved in sometimes. Just in terms of Act 46, was the sort of what I'm proposing for you is I would serve as the merger consultant for the Taconic and Green merger, which is Dorset, Manchester, Sunderland, and a large group of districts around that area. Very complex merger. I assisted the the Londonderry folks when they formed the first red in the state and moving that district once it was formed on top of the mountain up there down to the BRCU, so changing SU boundaries. Worked as the project manager for the Essex-Westford merger, fairly complex merger. In that case, I wasn't their consultant who helped form the district. I was the consultant hired to help merge the operations of the district together. Thank you, Mike. Have a good night. So I've had a variety of experiences around Act 46. In terms of process, Donna mentioned 706 quite a bit. I'll go back to, I use that term a lot. So we talk about merging school districts. There's nothing in really Act 46 that talks about how to do this. We fall back on an old law called 706. Act 46 really just talks about incentives and different requirements and, of course, the potential that the state's going to do something in 2019. But when we start talking about the process, we talk about 706. And 706 is an older statute. I'm talking about Title 16, Section 706. My understanding goes back to like the 50s and 60s, and Mount Anthony Union School District was formed through that process. So it's the exact same process. Act 46 modified it a little bit. Act 46 says, you go through this process that's outlined in Section 706, and you have to talk about those 5 goals that were mentioned at the front end. So you have to, when you do your study, you talk about what's in 706, but then you have to also go back and talk about these 5 objectives that Act 46 laid down. There's another sort of requirement in Act 46 as well. It talks about sort of a new criteria around geographic isolation. It means when this committee does its work, one of the criteria it has to consider is to what extent a proposed merger would impact any of its neighbors that would be left behind. So that's something that also was added in with Act 46. But other than that, really, the process itself comes from this older law, which was a different time in our history in the state. Back in the 50s and 60s, the state was incentivizing largely the building of large high schools. A lot of small high schools in Vermont were struggling. And the state put some money out there and said, we'd like to see bigger high schools built, and we'll give you lots of money to do that. And 706 was the statute that enabled that to happen. Of course, that's not the situation today in Vermont. We're looking at an era of declining enrollment and costs going up, and what have been a series of policy mechanisms, starting with Act 153, that was more or less a voluntary process. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but that really didn't, from the state's perspective, work out too well. I think there was only 1 or 2 districts that actually formed under the voluntary Act 153. So Act 156 was tweaking Act 153 a little bit, but ultimately we ended up with Act 46 being a little more forceful of a law because of the lack of success under the voluntary approach. But we still go back to the Section 706 law, which is from a different time period, and it's a little bit awkward sometimes to use it. But basically, what I've proposed doing with committees like yours, I should say your authority to exist as a committee comes from 706 itself. So this idea that you're going to have school boards appointing a group of representatives to get together and do a study, and your responsibility basically is a simple yes or no question. Is it advisable or not to merge these districts? So that's the beginning of the logic that comes from 706. At the end of the day, after we do a study, we come back, can you answer the question, is it a good idea or not to merge districts? I've been involved with study committees that have answered no to that question. I've been involved with study committees that have answered yes. So some of the questions you asked earlier, like, what is the educational value of merging? That's one of the questions you would answer as part of the study, Just to give you an example of when I was working with the Taconic and Green merger, we tried to answer that question a couple ways. One was to solicit input at a committee meeting like this. Our agenda that night was to talk about what are the educational pros and cons of doing this. What can't we do now that we would do that way? Or in what way would this harm our ability to do something educationally? And then the committee tasked the administration, the superintendent, its principals to go brainstorm and bring back to the committee in part of a formal presentation, did they see any value in merging or not? So the committee would get some feedback on that and then evaluate to what extent would the merger impact the educational outcomes or not. So 706 walks you through, there's basically 13 questions that have to be answered. Number 13 basically says, what else does the committee want to throw into its plan? As long as it's not illegal, you're pretty much allowed to throw in some other unique considerations to your districts. But basically what we do as a process is, first thing is we would try to develop a work plan for the committee. And I would say you've got a couple things that are sort of are going to drive the timeline of the process. One is this potential sunsetting of incentives that, as you heard, expire November 30th. So I'm not sure if anything, even if you were to propose yes, that this is advisable to merge these districts, we'd have to see if the configuration you'd want to do would qualify for incentives. But since that's a possibility, that becomes an important deadline to consider. I'm sure the voters, if you're in your communities, if they're any like the ones I've worked with, would be not happy if you came back with an answer that said, yes, it's a great idea to merge these districts. Oh, and by the way, we missed the deadline for the tax incentives. On the other hand, you have another important deadline, which is, it sounds like December 26th, which is even if you vote no, if this committee decides it's not advisable to merge these districts, you're still going to be required to come up with a report to the state to justify your current existence. This committee can help inform that work. That, as you saw from Donna's presentation, the responsibility to do that report will be with the school boards or a group of school boards. But if this committee does some analysis along those lines, it can help inform and seed that work as well. So my logic would be if you start off with this idea, you have to answer the question yes or no. Is it advisable to merge these districts? Then we back from that and say, okay, we're probably looking to, if we're going to go with tax incentives, we need to have an affirmative vote by the voters by November 30th. That means we have to have something before the state board by October at the latest, which means like September, we got to have a prototype of a plan in place that's been fully vetted by the communities involved. That's a pretty aggressive timeline. So typically what I would suggest we do is we would look at the 13 steps, develop a work plan for the committee, and try to answer the questions assuming that the answer would be yes, advisable. So you can't really, in my perspective, vote yes to merge the districts unless you know the terms under which you're merging. So one way to do that is to create a prototype, the best case scenario of how to merge the districts. And that in section 706 will walk you through all those things. The big question on 706 is, what's the grade configuration? What schools are you going to operate? That gets us into the options you heard tonight. But there's other things you have to discuss in those options, in the 13 questions, such as the financial configuration. What's the impact financially? What's going to be the board configuration? So 706 will take you right through those things. I find if you walk through that, you're going to encounter every political issue that your community will find important. And it's a doable thing to try to do over the summer, I think. You just have to have a real focused effort on it. Basically, what we try to do is work out a work plan for each meeting. Here's what we're going to talk about these 3 questions tonight. The committee would raise questions. We need more data on these things. We'd go off and try to find those pieces of data for you. And basically, we try to fill out a template of a model. I'd say if we could do that by late August, you'd be in pretty good shape to then really take that out to the communities for some real focused community interaction and refinement. So you have a refined sort of template of a plan done in September. And that would be enough, I think, to bring you to the point where this committee could vote yes or no. After you've seen a model of it, you've heard community interaction on those points, the committee should, if the committee's done its work well and the community's really responded to that, you should be in a good place mid to late September to vote yes or no, is it advisable to merge these districts? Because you've developed a real understanding of what's involved in that, answering that question. If you vote yes, it's advisable to merge the districts, then we have to develop a report that goes to the State Board of Education. Hopefully we've surfaced everything along the way, no work is wasted. We're able to draft something for October, and you sign off on the final version of that. It gets submitted to the State Board at their October meeting, and then it comes back for a vote before the voters. On the other hand, if you vote no, that it's not advisable to merge the districts, then you've got a lot of good stuff laying around that we could frame out for the school boards that are going to be responsible for submitting some sort of justification to the State Board to maintain the current structure. So I was invited tonight to sort of give you my 2 cents on that. I submitted a proposal to Donald and Jim for my services. Basically what I typically propose is a continuum of services, anything from facilitation all the way up to writing the reports, technical expertise. I'm not an attorney, so I have worked with your district's attorney very closely on a couple mergers. So it's important you're still going to have legal counsel involved. But I'm interested and willing to work with you if I can be of help to you. Nothing I heard tonight, precludes, my judgment. I'd be interested in helping out and be happy to answer any questions.
Would you flesh out just a little bit more? So
Yeah.
13 steps sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
And it.
Some of them aren't so big.
So is it 2 a night, or is it so how many meetings,
Yeah.
what are we looking at to
Yeah.
get to the end of August, to get to a sort of a, being able to come up with a consensus by late August? What's the actual commitment, and could this group do it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, there's some questions, the hardest questions to answer are things like, what's the name of the new school district? Those, what are the colors of the new rugs or something like that? Those are hard. But the real trick is doing the financial analysis, I think, because you're going to get focused on a couple different merger scenarios, and you're going to want to know the financial implications of doing that. So the question I would have is how readily available is the data to do that, So we rely on the SU office to produce some modeling. Yeah. So assuming that's done, basically be looking at probably a couple Saturdays, like full day sessions with feeding people to get through some things. I think the really important part of the study is the educational rationale for doing it. Does it make sense to do this? Because if we can't come up with a good educational rationale to do it, there's no reason to really go much farther with it.
That was really your question, right?
The financial, in my experience, no one really does this to save 8 cents. At the end of the day, it's going to be, does this make sense educationally for the future?
Yeah.
And you have to be able to answer that question in some detail. So what I would propose to do is to sort of front load the process and really spend some time on answering those 5 goals from Act 46 that are required. To what extent would this merger allow you to have a more sustainable governance structure? Would it provide greater equity and so forth? We'd walk through those things or figure out how we'd answer them. Maybe the committee doesn't have all the information. Maybe it needs to bring in some people from the district to help answer that. Like I said, brainstorm a little bit. But if you can spend some time on those sort of foundational topics, then the rest of it sort of flows more mechanically. So we get to issues like, okay, we're gonna focus on this mud example. So the case where North Bennington could potentially vote no. So if that's the most likely scenario, then we can spend more time modeling that out from a tax rate perspective and a cost perspective. If, on the other hand, you still want to, flesh out 6 different models fully, then that's going to take more time.
It looks like to me like there's really only 2 that we'd have to be focusing on. And the Section 9 would be where you get if you can't get anything else done.
Yeah, and this, I would say I would encourage you to take advantage of the 706 process to also help support this Section 9 report, because if the committee shuts its work down by voting no, it's not advisable to merge, you've done some good work that can help the boards with their responsibility under that. That Section 9 is not your responsibility. That's something that goes to the school boards.
Great. So you all haven't seen the proposal, I don't think. We didn't circulate that. But before we do questions for Dan, you want to just summarize how would we deal with the proposal? The money, everything else that might come with it?
So we've been informed by the state that we're not eligible for the $20,000 grant because it would have had to been in, because we did get the $5,000 grant for exploratory, but they wouldn't, because we hadn't defined what model we were looking at. We didn't have that defined. We weren't eligible for the $20,000. The deadline is at the end of this fiscal year, so the proposal for that grant money would have had to been in a few months ago, so it would go through the process and be approved. Because we did apply for it last year and got denied because we did not
hadn't picked a model.
So we got the $5,000 exploratory grant. So what's left over from the RED study, which the SU committee voted to transfer last time, at their last meeting, I want to say it was around $8,000, but so that's what we have line item right now. So anything more than that would have to, which will go fast. So between attorney fees and, though the attorney fees could come out of the SU fund. So I said, we got about 8,000, then we'd have to see where we could find the balance of that from within the different districts that are participating and do it proportionally payment that way. So, all I can sit here and tell you right now is we have $8,000 for the study.
Anybody got another 12,000? Well,
So realistically, we're going to go back to the individual boards and ask for money.
Right. Each board would have to vote to, my understanding is to transfer to the SU. Or the SU, the SU could find the money, and that's proportionally distributed from all the districts anyways, but then North Bennington is part of the SU, so it would have to come out of a fund that isn't a North Bennington fund, I think. I really don't know that answer, I don't.
My services have never run that high. I've submitted an hourly rate.
Right.
Typically, I would say, if you had me facilitating and doing it, you're talking about 10 grand, somewhere in that ballpark for my services. When we get into the articles and particularly looking at the governance model, that's where your legal fees, so you're going to have probably another 5 grand at least there.
So I'm not worried about the legal fees, because
Yeah.
we have a line item for that in the SU budget, but with what Dan says, his fees would typically run, then I'm confident that we could move forward from a financial point of view.
Could we pull the legal fees from the individual boards?
No, the legal fee,
Or just from SVSU?
it's already paid through the SU anyways, yeah.
satisfied with that.
And those legal bills they're paid proportionally.
So do we have to take formal action to hire Mr. French? Or is
I
it
would-
already-
I would think so,
I would
yeah.
look, if we think this is a good idea, so let's not do it unless we're ready to sacrifice a few Saturdays this summer, right? It's going to really require us to sort of bear down on this,
Well,
which,
considering it's an hourly rate, I think at least plan for one work session that might, after Dan leads us through it, we might become more enlightened on how far we want to pursue it. Because just, the comments I'm hearing, I don't think there's unification on what option anybody wants to pursue. I thought we were when we disbanded the exploratory committee. I thought we were pretty sure where the majority of us wanted to head, that it was, but I'm not so sure anymore. So I think if we do it one day at a time with some guidance, and least develop that work plan and see what comes first, and see how many people we can get on board with that.
are you willing to do that with us, to kind of take a trial run and see if we can get to the point that we
Sure.
can take the next step?
Yeah, we have an agreement, but yeah, I'd be willing to help you do
Yeah.
that. I think, once again, I don't see it as, you're under the gun in terms of time, but even if you vote no to merge, it's not going to be wasted effort, in terms of informing the board's work to have a response ready for the December 26th deadline. So you're still going to, something's going to have to be sent to the state.
So we are under the gun for the
Yeah.
timelines, which I think all the board members, though there are different members here now, acknowledged when we disbanded the exploratory committee last August, that those were probably going to be lost to us. And actually, my conversation with Steve Stitzel was a little bit even tighter. He felt that we would have to schedule, if it got to the point they were going to schedule community votes in the districts, that would be the November 7th date, because there's a 30-day, recall on any vote, so to get it to the, and which would mean, he felt we would have to have it to the September state board, which means we'd have to be completed our work, everything submitted to Donna Russo really by like August, late August. Because when I had a conversation with Donna earlier, I said, so August 31st would be our drop dead date to get everything to you, and her comment was, well, it may be a little before that, so
Yeah.
so that she had time to review.
Yeah,
it.
it's going to be a tight timeline, but I think, the challenge with that is, I would recommend trying to produce a prototype from this committee of what, assuming you're going to flesh it all out and say, okay, here's the best case scenario. At that point, you still have to do some community engagement, a significant amount of community engagement. The challenge with doing it in August is no one really cares about education policy issues in August. Come September, everyone comes out of the woodwork and they're interested. So it's going to be, we'll have to do some really in-depth involvement. And, part of my question is like, how much of this has gone on before? Maybe you feel like the conversation's out there already in the communities. But I find it's on the one side, you can spin your wheels on this thing. On the other hand, if you can produce a prototype and do some focus engagement, it gets pretty heated, but it also is a very efficient way to grab a lot of public opinion quickly.
Yeah. So we did public forums in every community
Yeah.
back when, but it didn't have the focus of,
Right.
here's the model.
Yeah.
Certainly the modified unified school district was discussed and probably the leading model as we walked through all those different forums, but it wasn't a formal proposal that here's what the board is recommending, what do you think of it? That didn't happen.
And I could see, I'll give you my sense of it as we get into it, but you very might well say, we need to do this more thoughtfully, the heck with the 8 cents, and because there's no way the voters are going to vote for it if it's pushed down their throat without some engagement. So we just forego the tax incentive, or try to have your representatives get involved in extending it for you again, but just do it in a more deliberate and well-done way so the voters feel comfortable knowing all the implications of what they're voting on, which still would have to, sounds like, still have to file that plan on December 26th, but that plan's contents would essentially be, we're in the process of going through a 706 study,
I see, we need a little more time?
Yeah, we need a little more time.
An extension?
But,
So if we take the tax incentive off the table,
Right.
that gives us more.
get a little more cushion, you're still going to have to
You still have
respond to the other thing.
Yeah,
but
not a lot of cushion though.
Yeah, no, I think it's
2 months.
doable to do a study through the summer. I just worry about the community engagement piece.
I'd like to move we hire Mr. French for his
Second.
established rate for at least one session during which we have to determine an outline for our work plan going forward.
Second.
Let's
Okay,
get going.
motion on the table, we've got a second here. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, observations, other discussion? No? All right, so all in favor of hiring Mr. French? All right.
So now do we-
You've got it, buddy.
Look forward to working with you.
or do we want to set a date now when we have everyone present, or?
I think it's going to be miserable doing this. I wonder if we, is this our last order of business? Because if it is, if setting a date's our last order of
It's
business,
not
this,
actually on the.
this could take a little while, and I would certainly welcome anyone who doesn't want to sit through the date shuffle. Get up and have at it. As long as we can hear each other, that's fine with me.
It's wedding season, remember that.
But thank everyone who did come. Thank you very much for coming tonight, and we hope you will stay engaged. And as we get into more exciting things, we hope you'll be here to help us through them. Yeah, Barry.
How many people are on this committee? How many members of this committee?
I think it's everybody plus.
one
No,
absent.
I mean, how many total are there representing districts? How many people? In other words, you had a full quorum.
Everybody here plus one.
Well, you've got everyone except,
One's
Yeah.
missing.
Yeah, we're missing one from Powell. Yeah. All right, Dan, what do you got for us?
I'm out of town first week of August, well, other than that, I'm pretty flexible.
Do we want to go as soon as possible, or, and would the process be that you would meet with us first, Dan? What information you want us putting together?
Yeah, I could propose an outline maybe to you and Donald.
Okay.
I think it's good to start off with a little foundational knowledge on Act 46, just like 3 slides, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, and review this. The AOE puts out a worksheet which covers the 706 process, so we basically be filling in that worksheet as part of the process.
So some of the new members would probably really appreciate that, right? Like the primer?
Yeah, I think it's really,
Yeah.
it's good to
That'd be
go
great.
through that.
That'd be great to do that. So,
So I think, if we did, the first session would be like 2 hours. I mean, that's,
Okay.
and then we can, our goal would be at the end of that to finalize a work plan.
So the first session isn't going to be necessarily a Saturday
No,
session?
no.
Okay.
I think we get to
Okay.
know each other a little bit and try to agree on a work plan.
All right,
And
2 hour,
Is there a reason why we're picking Saturdays? Just curious.
not anymore, because this, he said 2 hour session, so now we can do,
Because I think
Then
weekdays would,
Yeah.
me personally, I mean.
so what's a good, throw out a
Saturdays
good, throw out a good weekday.
So we're here Tuesday.
How about,
Yeah.
how about a Tuesday? How about an upcoming Tuesday?
As far as district goes,
Tuesdays are
like
fine.
Tuesday is a night that we don't typically have other meetings going on.
If we just got our initial meeting on the calendar, then, we would do like sort of an orientation to the process of that meeting, and then part of that, we'd set up a schedule. We know we'd create a work plan and then try to work through everyone's schedule. I just think there's going to be some focused days.
Yeah.
And whether it's a Saturday or not,
Or
it doesn't
even-
need to be.
Right, even
We
like.
could start at
I'd
3
rather have
o'clock.
2 weekdays in a
Yeah.
row, like.
So I'm out of
long
town
sessions.
20.
Yeah.
And Jim,
Okay.
the districts don't hold meetings in July.
July, no.
So
Only on a
pretty
as-needs
flexible.
basis. So, you're not here the 20th. What about Thursday, the 22nd? That seems to be open. Or,
Thursday, the 22nd is open for me.
Of June?
Not me.
Of June, no?
Not me.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Then the 27th.
Tuesday, the 27th,
Good.
I'm
Yep.
not available.
you're not
I'm out
available?
of town.
For that whole week?
I'm back Wednesday.
Thursday,
Available
the-
that Thursday, the 29th.
Thursday, the 29th, what?
I'm available.
Thursday, the 29th?
I am, it's the day before I leave for vacation, yes,
It's a great way to go.
I did that, I did my last.
I am. Yes.
Jeff, what about
ready to
you?
go then.
Thursday, the 29th?
That's fine, yeah.
So that's a ways from now. Should we try, is that too far?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I'll get with you to draft out a work plan so we can
Yeah.
chat about that.
Everybody
7
else
o'clock?
likes Thursday, the
6 or
29th?
7.
6 or 7.
How about earlier, 6 to 8, 6 to, is that?
Yeah.
Is there anything next week, the week of the 19th? Just so we can,
Well, it's end of the school week for a lot of the kids.
Wait, well, so if Dan can get out, maybe he can get some of the stuff out for you to be chewing on, but.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah.
So when we looked at last week, some were not available on the 20th, next week. Tuesday, the 20th, you said you're unavailable, and Thursday, the 22nd, you said you were unavailable.
so it's mostly Tuesdays and Thursdays we're looking at.
Well, we could look at Wednesday, the 21st.
So, Monday, the 19th is a possibility, because teacher negotiation was settled, so those aren't happening on
It's
Mondays
a select
anymore.
board meeting that night.
Select board meeting on Monday, yeah. We're gonna.
Wednesday doesn't work for people.
Wednesday doesn't work for people?
Wednesday, we have, it'll be the MAU board and Pownell school boards will be the 21st.
I think we're looking at Tuesdays and Thursdays between select boards and planning commissions and all those things. So the next available date is
29th.
June 27th, Thursday, June 27th, right?
29th.
29th.
I'm sorry, Thursday, June 29th, yeah. Which I was holding for a visit with the Pownell Select Board, but I think I'll reschedule that.
So that is 6 to 8, you said?
Here.
6 to whatever.
Here, yeah. Assume it's here, I will check tomorrow, make sure that the calendar is, that the room is available, and if it isn't, then we'll find an alternative, so.
And anything you can get to us in the meantime would be.
Yeah, I think,
So we can kind
what,
of come in and.
yeah, what I'll do is I'll send you the AOE worksheet, which will be
Okay.
the sort of the template we'll use to fill in. That's a great guide, because if you do submit to the state board, you have to fill that out anyway, then you submit your report as sort of the second document. But I think it's a useful way to organize the work. You can start reading through that. And I have some slides on Act 46 I'll send you in advance.
Great.
Great.
And possibly maybe the three of us should meet before that.
Sure.
To
Yeah.
see what information, to make that night more productive, what
Yeah.
information you would like us to get.
Yeah,
So
we can
I'm
start
sure we'll
drafting
be
out a
able to-
work plan.
And do you have, working order of some of the districts Donna mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, there's a great website. The AOE actually keeps a copy of everything on the state website. So
Yeah.
there's a URL, it's called, if you search Agency of Vermont Act 46 merger activity, you'll come to that website. So there's there's all the merger documents, including the documents that went to the state board, including the template documents, they're all there. Some of them are more useful than others. So if you're contemplating a modified union or a MUD, Chittenden East, that she mentioned, is a good one. They had a very similar situation with Huntington.
If you, so my experience with the AOE websites is they're totally overwhelming. And there's so much stuff there. that
Just go to
you can't make
Google and
heads or
Google
tail
up
of.
Vermont Act 46 merger activity.
Well, I guess I'm inviting
I can
you,
put the link
if
right
there
here.
are things here, that would be
Sure.
particularly helpful
Yeah.
for us to,
Because then
and
we could redistribute.
so that we're
Yeah,
not
that would
wading
be great.
through every single
I'll
thing.
send you the Chittenden East stuff.
That would be great. Would
Yeah.
would that be helpful?
And
Yes.
I'll put the link, I'll put the link to the state as well, but I'll send you the documents as an attachment.
So one of the things I found interesting with all these things is they're not like the middle school situation that we have. When they say, when they're saying K through, or pre-K through 8, they're not accounting necessarily for the separate, are they accounting necessarily for the separate building? Because we have,
It's by school district though, not building.
Right.
So Mount Anthony is a 7 through 12 school district.
okay, so it's.
6 through 12, it operates two
6
schools.
through 12,
Yeah,
right?
so it's
Even
a
though-
district.
Right.
Yeah,
BSD
Manchester is a
pays-
9 through 12.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it's, I'll spend some time learning your districts a little better.
Yeah, it's just.
But it's by- yeah,
it's
by-
K through 8, all the examples and we're
Yeah.
I mean,
K
7
through
through
6.
12.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Bennington's 7 through 6.
All right, any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Great, thank you very much, everybody.
Sixth graders.
Thank you.